Hey there, welcome to episode 121 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at 1:23 p.m. on Tuesday, June 10, 2025. Tons of stuff to do. Hence, the title of today's episode, Getting Things Done. A little change of pace, perhaps. No, it's ironically what we're trying to do. We've been spending too much time trying to get things done. It's time to get things done. Hence today's episode. If you are not familiar with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, let me give you a little background. Our purpose statement: to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. Purposely vague, yes. We were originally the Code for Vegas Foundation. We were originally the Code for Vegas Brigade, part of Code for America, about 10 years ago, a little bit longer. We rebooted our organization in January of 2022. We formed the Code for Vegas Foundation Nevada nonprofit in June of 2022. So I think it was June 16th. So our third birthday is fast approaching. And we became a completely standalone 501c3 public charity in October. So that's retroactive to our formation date, of course. So we've been a 501c3 public charity for about 3 years now. Coming up, our fiscal year ends at the end of this month, June 30th, 2025. Will be 3 years old. Interesting times. We've learned a lot along the way, and now we can start talking about getting things done. Hopefully, wherever you found this. By the way, civic volunteer organization, not just civic tech. Innovation can take many forms. That's why we are purposely vague. Ideation, innovation, and implementation can be anything, and it should be. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, a summary that I will read to you, and the same 4 links as usual. We're actually going to have a little bit of a, not a drastic change, but we're going to kind of reorganize the way some things are presented and made available online. So coming soon, a little tuning of the links and the content associated with them and so on. But in the meantime, it's the same 4. You've probably heard them before. It takes me about 3 minutes, I think, to get through the description of them. So keep that in mind if you want to skip over. So let's get started so we can get finished on this warm Vegas afternoon. We have talked about cohorts, motivation, and the business of civic volunteerism in recent episodes. I think they had those titles, in fact. Now the real challenge, advancing the cause or causes and making sure there is something to get attention for. That was yet another recent episode, in fact. Let me fix one little typo here. I said the instead of there is something to get attention. The links for today's episode. So start your forward skip if you want. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation homepage, Innovate for, F-O-R, Vegas, all one word, no spaces, innovateforvegas.org. You will find various pieces of information about our organization, our initiatives, our business ID, all the legal stuff about our nonprofit status. We're in good standing as a nonprofit and as a public charity. Coming up on our third fiscal year, which means we are no longer limited by a $50,000 per year gross receipts cap. We've never come anywhere near that. But hopefully some donation driver initiatives will unfold without those constraints in our 4th year and beyond. Might be interesting. Check that out over time. Again, I'm this month, so in June, there will be a little bit of a reorg. So our one.org website will probably become 2, which will be in line with our the operation of the foundation and then the focus on the initiatives by volunteers in our cohort. Kind of minor, but important. Projectact.info, project hyphen, hyphen key is next to the 0 on most keyboards. ACT.info is kind of the main development / information website for Project ACT, our autonomous cohort tessellation initiative, which will aim at improving discovery of civic volunteer cohorts, but also others working on interesting things, mostly open source efforts, to enable and encourage connection, communication, and collaboration amongst those cohorts, autonomous cohorts. The tessellation being a mosaic, the tiles that make up the mosaic or tessellation being the cohorts. It's an idea we came up with in October of 2022 when Code for America first appeared to be leaning away from the brigade program, which they would ultimately sunset. So autonomous cohorts, we all are. AgileForVolunteers.org, Agile, F-O-R, volunteers, no punctuation, AgileForVolunteers.org is our initiative aimed at making the most of volunteer time, effort, and expertise with a whole team focus, inspired by the original Agile methodology, which was conceived of by and for professional software developers. So we're starting way back there, hopefully untainted by what some refer to as the Agile industrial complex. So it's not about satisfying management or following hard and fast rules that someone was advised to follow, probably an Agile coach. No, this is about volunteers and about putting volunteer time, effort, and expertise to good use, and it's something we'll be talking about today. Finally, Mastodon.Vegas is our eventual... I've been talking about this for weeks or months now, but the fact is Mastodon.Vegas will be one of those donation drivers I mentioned. So as we wrap up our third fiscal year and we enter a time where we can actually, hopefully, receive some support from our communities to dive into some endeavors, a Mastodon server could run into some money if it catches on. So as a donation driver, we hope that people in the greater Vegas area and maybe beyond, people interested in the greater Vegas area, can participate in supporting our nonprofit, our public charity, and our foundation efforts by clicking a donate button found on the Mastodon server. We will host and continue servicing. It's a quick rundown. I don't know if that was 3 minutes. I think it was longer, but hopefully you found some of that interesting. Now let's get on with the show, getting things done. First, what are we up against? We have already talked about some of the challenges in the previous episodes of this program, to which I referred at the top here, the top of this episode. But the real potential of a civic volunteer organization is found in its volunteers. The real progress is made by converting that potential into work, if you will permit my classical physics. Potential energy converted to work. What is it? Potential energy equals MGH, mass, gravity, gravitational constant, and the height, or equivalent. And when we let that potential convert to work, who knows what's possible? Hopefully we'll find out. The dividing line, the low wall, if you like, between governing the foundation we have and directing volunteer time, effort, and expertise and actual initiative work is not always immediately obvious. And I will say here that directing is not about a managerial hierarchy. It's kind of hopefully the current found in a flowing water stream, something similar. This is volunteers are not employees. They're not being told what to do. They're being asked to participate and to contribute their time, effort, and expertise. And hopefully everyone collaborating together will find something in it for them. So the notion of directing this is really more a matter of making the most of it so that we aren't all standing around looking at each other, if that makes sense. It really does make sense, though, again, to enable the foundation and its volunteers as a specific focus. So enabling becomes a focus rather than making it yet another thing to mix in with pursuit of our various initiatives. So rather than making what we are now calling officially, it's been in the kitchen for a while, Agile for Volunteers is a specific initiative to address what could easily be called a weakness in civic volunteer effort. The first challenge for the foundation as a whole, though, is to build a platform, including the governance, policies, plans, and infrastructure to enable not only the initiatives we can start with, but the possibility of enabling and encouraging the ideation, innovation, and implementation we are hoping to enable and encourage to, of course, make our communities better. It is this purpose statement, paraphrased slightly, but that is basically it. that we started with 3 years ago, a little bit more than 3 years ago, technically, and the one we are pursuing with one person or everybody making us go forward. So I may be the one doing the podcast and authoring the documentation for Agile for Volunteers and working on some user stories because we're applying Agile for Volunteers to the development of Agile for Volunteers, of course. But we should be able to grow to thousands and hundreds of thousands of civic volunteer contributors. And we should be able to be as communicative. No, that's not really realistic, but it should be something that one or more people can accomplish in a transparent way so that if people want to join, hop on, as I like to say, hop on, hop off like a tour bus, they should be able to. So let's talk about that infrastructure. I mentioned infrastructure as one of the important enabling pieces, and this is absolutely true. Essentially, that's what the foundation is for, right? We're not, the foundation itself is not doing the work, of course. We're trying to enable and encourage civic volunteers and civic volunteer-minded people to do that. I happen to be in both groups. Whether it is a website to be found at all, a website is helpful. Maybe managing and maintaining a Discord server or a Slack server, if those work, a GitHub or GitLab organization, or maybe GitTea, Gitea. It's something I'm actually looking at pretty seriously, which could be a self-hosted possibility for us as a mirror repository scheme for our initiative work or for other uses. So there are a variety of platforms that help to manage documents and progress of initiatives and projects and so on. And whatever else in some combination that will likely be responsive to the whole team as it emerges and matures and makes progress and whatnot. Responsive as in, it would work better. And we actually determine whether it would work better. What I've run into, by the way, side note, people will say, oh, you should try this. And I say, first of all, is that free or do we have to pay for it? Second, are you saying I should try this or we should try this? And if you want, why don't you roll that out? Why don't you establish some sort of a testable version of what you're describing or suggesting? And we can do that. So most things are going to be a group effort, and hopefully the whole team will be able to evolve based on experience and suggestions and some motivation to actually participate and turn those suggestions into some action. Will elevate the team and the way that we can best use our volunteer time, effort, and expertise. I will say over my many decades in this, in the tech field, for example, there is always the opportunity, unfortunately, to enter or to find oneself in a state where we try to accomplish things and we spend more of our time, effort, and expertise trying than we do doing. So if we find that our whole teams are mired in Slack or making projects work on GitHub or something, those are things to fix. Merely spending time trying things out is kind of a potential win, potential lose situation, but clearly we need to identify things that are not working so we can try to find things that are working. And that's part of the infrastructure and it's part of a whole team approach. And that's what Agile for Volunteers is about, among other things. In addition to the tools and methods, a solid foundation for our foundation, see what I did there, really needs to include something of a presence that gets attention, which was a recent episode topic, of course, so that the larger population has any idea that people are actually pursuing these positive efforts. So they might even join in or at least talk about such things. There are a few things as frustrating. That's something of a hand wave. There are a lot of things that are frustrating, but if you want to volunteer your time, effort, and expertise to work on something and nobody notices, nobody takes interest, nobody talks about it, nobody mentions it, it can be something of an uphill climb to continue focusing on such things. So everybody likes a pat on the back or a little bit of appreciation or acknowledgement at least. This, by the way, is one of the reasons we have a complete across the board attribution policy. Anybody who contributes to any initiatives and projects and whatnot is offered. You can always opt out. You don't have to get a light shown upon you. But everybody is offered attribution. Hey, this was made possible by these 10 people. What I have found in my travels, especially in the tech arena, is that, oh, if you're not a coder working on this thing, then you don't belong in the contributors file, or you don't get the same type of credit or acknowledgement. That is a failure. All volunteers get mentioned unless they don't want to be. And hopefully people will grant that attention. And that's one of our goals. Part of our infrastructure is being found. With with tools and methods and general awareness from the people in proximal communities and maybe distal communities also. And that is one of our goals, is to reach beyond Vegas, especially to other cohorts of civic volunteers, but others in general. Luckily, we have almost 40 million. I think it won't be quite 40 million for the near term, but 40 million people or so visiting the greater Vegas area. It's an opportunity to engage and interact with people from other places. Donor funding and maybe some sponsors make hackathons with snacks are a possibility, maybe t-shirts and stickers, and even non-gratis infrastructure if we need to use something that is not necessarily free, even for nonprofit public charities. That takes money. That's not a oh, I'm sure someone will pay for it. That's not one of those deals. So sometimes those things require some funds. All of these come together on as our org. Fix that little typo there. Not as our org grows in number and in achievement. So of course we need to start somewhere to get anywhere, which we have. And I mentioned the Mastodon.Vegas server as a donation driver. That would be an example of hosting a service that would have value. It would bring value to the people of Greater Vegas. It would be a geographically focused server instance. It would be a component of our overall information awareness efforts, the My Muni and Welcome projects or initiatives. And as a donation driver, it would not be a subscription service. You wouldn't be required to pay, but it would be an opportunity to say, hey, here's what civic volunteers in the Greater Vegas area are working on if you'd like to be supportive. And then, some of that money would go towards maintaining the service. I'm sure if it catches on, our cloud bills would be more than zero. So we'll see how that goes. A little experiment in action. Kind of in keeping with that, we're basically taking a startup approach. We, the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, are a startup. From most perspectives, we are under-resourced. And that means money. That means people. We are doing something unusual, something novel. Now, not that civic volunteer brigades from the Code for America days are a new thing, but here in Vegas, it hasn't been around for a while, Code for Vegas. And now that we are, getting that attention has been something of a challenge. So, we're doing something unusual. We have identified gaps and challenges we wish to address, just like startups usually do. And our value proposition takes some storytelling to get our point across. Oh, so you're not the Uber of, no, we're not. No, this is elevating communities through efforts that are not merely writing software, and the discussion continues. I have always said this of startups from my days in Silicon Valley from 1993 to 2013, before when I was in my educational mode, and since here in Vegas, for example, that startups are not the best places for extra people to hang out. That is, especially if you are at a startup as your day job, so to speak, you are essential. There are no spare people hanging out waiting to be needed at startups. The reason you are there is because you are needed. We have a similar challenge in that people who do intend to contribute their time, effort, and expertise as volunteers need to know that they are needed, and that our foundation and its various initiatives and endeavors are not intended to be hangouts or time sinks. This is not I have nothing better to do. Maybe I'll look and see what the Innovate for Vegas Foundation is working on. So sort of a two-way street in that regard. But again, startups, you're not going to go to a startup. Oh, there's only 5 people here. What are you doing? What are you 5 people working? What are you working on? Oh, nothing. I'm just hanging out, waiting to see if something comes along. No, that doesn't happen. That's just not how startups work. And we are essentially a startup. As with startup companies, our startup organization is a work in progress and will benefit from the contributions of those who want to take part. At a startup, these people are paid in some way, whether it's a lot of money or maybe a little bit of money and a lot of stock options or some equivalent of equity in the endeavor. Our compensation for volunteers is not financial, of course, and comes from a place within individuals and the camaraderie of collaborating and so on. Now, of course, I'm leaving out the labs pursuit and whatnot I've talked about in previous episodes, and that will come up again. But Our foundation and its specific goals and the initiatives on which we are working and focused are 100% volunteer, top to bottom. So ideally, those who do wish to join in will approach any infrastructure issues as an opportunity to contribute, to make our own systems better, something like a meta initiative, perhaps. In fact, I do have an infrastructure initiative as one of our items. So everything from website to messaging platform to whatever else, our how-to documents to help people onboard, everything is an initiative. So that one is for ourselves. We work to elevate our own volunteer community. So people that want to participate should feel that they can try to improve our system and hopefully collaborate in doing so that we may point our efforts toward elevating our surrounding communities. In other words, we don't want to spend our volunteer time, effort, and expertise trying to get things done. So let's make sure we aren't doing that. Let's address a need or fill a gap or whatever we need to do. Let's talk about it. Let's be honest and open and creative and come up with solutions that work so that we can spend our time, effort, and expertise on our community elevation initiatives, other than elevating our own community. That's still important, not discounting that. But at some point, we have to be a functional organization to do the things we want to set out to accomplish. As far as volunteering in general, I have my favorite analogy when it comes to groups of volunteers. And that one revolves around a group of volunteers helping a friend move. I'm sure you've all been there somewhere, especially if you're more along a college age, in the college age range. Why do people offer to help their friends move from one place to another? Or why do they respond in the affirmative if asked? Each may have their own reasons, but it is probably safe to say you help because it is in your nature and you want to help your friend or colleague or maybe a family member. Hey, can you help me move this weekend? Sure. I've been there. I've done that many times. And in the old days, I was offered reciprocity. People would help me move. That became harder and harder as we get older. Usually people will expect you're going to hire movers, but even something as simple as I will get down to here, moving a couch. The contract is not firm, of course, but you probably said yes. If you were asked, you probably received a message of some sort. Nowadays, it would be a text or some messaging platform. In the old days, it might have been a phone call, maybe an email. Email's been around for a while. Before that, it probably would have been a telegram. Maybe you have a Morse code station in your home back then. Indicating a time and a place, maybe asking what sort of toppings you like on your pizza. That's the traditional moving meal, mostly because all of the plates are put away or in boxes or in transit. So you're going to have to use a paper towel and maybe a pizza box. You may have an opportunity to rescind your intent to participate. Maybe something came up. This is the nature of volunteering, one's time. And the other side of that equation, relying on volunteers. That's why you ask more friends than you need. And then if extras show up, it's an extra pizza. And strangely, if 10 people show up and it's the job for 8 people, then those 2 people don't need to stand around. You just scale the work and spread it out a little bit more. People get done more quickly. There's a little bit more pizza to eat. There will need to be a little bit more pizza to eat and move on from there. It is important to remember, though, that even in something as simple seeming as helping with a move, there are multiple participants here, at least one moving, right? You're going to help your friend move. That's someone, and presumably that person will be moving things also. And at least you in this example scenario. So that's at least 2 people. Suppose you are moving a couch. You indicate that you will be there and you don't show up. That couch is now effectively immovable. Now, if I'm moving a couch and I call on a friend to help, I'm not going to call 10 friends because we have one couch. So I'm not going to be able to say, oh, the other 9 people, thanks for showing up. Do you want to watch us move this couch? Now, one person is involved, the person with the couch, and that person cannot proceed without you. So I can't move. The reason I asked for help was I can't move the entire couch by myself. Somebody needs that other end. This extends to any volunteer effort. So that's why I use the couch as an example. If you say you're going to show up to help move the couch and you don't show up, you've not only not shown up for yourself, but you've left at least one other person unable to advance the cause. Maybe you would prefer a bucket brigade example. That's another one I use frequently, where everyone who said they were going to be there really needs to be there. or those buckets are not going to move so easily. And, if something is on fire, those buckets of water got to move. Showing up is important, especially if we say we are going to show up. However, in the real world, volunteers have a life. They have things to do. Things do come up. I have spoken of this before. We are using Agile for Volunteers to develop Agile for Volunteers. Very meta, small m. If that makes sense, to test our notion that if we are concise and transparent about what we are endeavoring to develop, and if we can advertise our progress along the way, the ability of people to join, to hop on and hop off as needed, that's a visualization I lean on now and then, need not upset progress. The idea is to be clear about the couch, who is going to take which end, where it is moving from, where it is moving to, and if we need help, if we need to delay moving the couch, we can see what else might be on hold by illustrating the overall initiative and component project parts and the team members committing their efforts in the short term. In other words, moving a couch is something that's sort of arranged ad hoc, right? There's no project planning, there's no scheduling, there's no Gantt charts and all that. But moving a house, if you're helping your friend move their apartment or move their house or all of their belongings and all that, there might be multiple people. Knowing in advance who's available, when, right? Maybe it's a multi-day move. Who can help on Saturday? Who can help on Sunday? Maybe it's going to be some heavy objects. Maybe it's going to be some boxes that are smaller and lighter, but there'll be a lot of them. So you can actually sort of factor the effort required and who's available when, and actually put some thought into it. If you can make that entire plan visible and accessible in such a way as your friends or the people that are going to help you can see, if I don't show up, these 3 people are going to be at a disadvantage and it will throw off the project. This is not about managing the project. It's about making sure that you and the other people volunteering their time understand how they are collaborating to make this happen, right? The person's going to move. It might take longer if nobody shows up. They may end up having to hire some people, which we don't get to hire people. We're not doing that. But the fact is, if everyone can see how their contribution figures into the big picture, everybody will be aware of what happens if they cannot make it. The idea is to be clear about the couch and who's going to take which end, like I said. So we apply that to initiatives and component projects. Who intends to work on what? No need to duplicate volunteer effort. No need to spend time doing things over. At the same time, we want to minimize the amount of time one spends saying, well, wait, who's working on this? Or how is this related to that? Right. So again, transparency and hopefully some clarity. Where Agile was designed by professional software developers for professional software developers, Agile for Volunteers is designed, or is being designed. It's always going to be a work in progress. And by the way, so is Agile, but that's a different thing. Designed for people who are not paid to work full, work weeks. The 40-hour week is not applicable here. They're not beholden to an employer and a management infrastructure. They're not trying to impress their upper management and so on, but rather to them. Their responsibility is rather to themselves and their colleagues in a cohort. So again, like helping a friend move, you're not being paid. Nobody's going to fire you if you don't show up. So it's really, the motivation has to come from within. The presumption is volunteers cannot commit with 100% certainty. That's just, life happens. You're fitting your volunteer efforts in between the workday or other responsibilities, which is where our atomic team concept comes to play, so that the commitment is on a 2-week term or iteration. We begin with some completion goals. We set out at the beginning of the iteration and say, here's what we're going to try to accomplish. Here's how these things are related to other things, and so on. At the end of the iteration, we have a retrospective. Okay, how far did we get? Who completed what? What's up? And where we are for the next 2-week iteration. And that is that. Participating in the next atomic team iteration is, of course, allowed and encouraged even. If that's the word, if allowed can be used. You're welcome or invited, whatever works. But the assumption ahead of time is long-term commitment to volunteer endeavors is not for everyone, and it's not for everyone every time. For example, if I said, can you help me move? Can you help me move a couch? Can you help me move my home to a different location? That's kind of a one-shot deal. You can say you're on an atomic team. Okay, we're going to be moving on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I can make it both days. Okay, great. At the end of the weekend, you might say, we have a few more things to move. Can someone help me on Monday or next weekend? And then we'll be done. And you might need 2 people to help move a couch or whatever it is. But you're not asking people to help you move every weekend or during the week. It's not a job. It's a volunteer iteration. So you may need help every weekend. Hey, now that I'm moved in, you want to help me unpack? So that's a different option, right? You're not committing to everything. You're committing to help move. Maybe you're committing to help unpack. Those are 2 separate iterations. You may be invited to do both, but you're not expected. So you can say yes or no to either or both, and everybody's fine. Transparency and communication, though, that helps. So getting things done. Oh, by the way, I only had 2 bullet items for that. So I kind of wrapped up with the third one. Communication. Yeah, communication, transparency, and understanding individual and group contribution to the overall goals is important. That is ad hoc, ad lib writing on the fly. So now we're wrapping it up here. Let's talk about actually getting things done. So our first 3 years, again, coming to an end at the end of this month. So we'll be 3 years old, fiscally 3 years old. We are technically 3 years old in January because that's when we started talking about this and getting the ball rolling. We had our first hackathon and other activities as we were ramping up. We formed our corporation in June of 2022, nonprofit corporation, and we received our determination. So we are, by all measures, 3 years old. Has been an interesting and a formative time. The importance of having a plan for moving along development timelines has been a critical focus that did not receive an ideal amount of attention up front. Honestly, there was a presumption that people would be a little bit more self-organizing, and that did not turn out to be the case. In the last year, we've definitely been paying more attention. I've spent almost all of my focused time as far as initiatives on Agile for Volunteers, documentation, and basically, I've read a couple of books. I've thought through some workflows, how I would represent those, how to make this something that people can use, whether they are software people or otherwise. Hopefully softening an introduction to the concept. We have to work on some introductory materials for those completely new to the idea. We have to also be introductory to people who have been tainted by bad experiences with the Agile industrial complex, and so on and so on and so on. So it's in the last year has become our primary focus, the belief being that not project management, but volunteer time management is key to the value proposition for volunteers interested in our initiatives and in our cohort. So again, as I was mentioning earlier, you're not asking people to help move, telling them the time and the place and what you want to accomplish and whatever, to manage the project of moving. You want to make sure the people that are going to help you move understand what they're getting themselves into. And so they know that who and when and how and all that. Fewer surprises will be a helpful thing in my experience. With transparency and structure and design thinking and how these are not only established but improved over time through interactive iteration, the tools and the process and the volunteer time management and so on, we hope to make what we are aiming for visible to those looking in over the fence, if you like, or like checking us out, to bring them to an aha moment where they might say, I understand how I could contribute to this, whatever it is. It interests me. I see what they're working on. I see what they're trying to accomplish. I see who they're aiming at providing these tools or this effort for or to. And I believe this would not be a waste of my efforts. And believe it or not, that can so often be the case. And that's really a motivation detractor. There is sometimes a reflexive view that this is about software development. In fact, I've encountered this many times. I've told the story of our renaming, but I'm still occasionally presented with the notion of, oh, you should talk to our IT person, or, oh, you should speak to the tech side of something. And I always say, it's not only tech, and, anybody can be an innovator. You don't need to be a certain age, a certain anything. Anyone can have ideas. And sometimes if you work with others, you can make those ideas happen. So there is sometimes that reflexive view that it's about software development, but it is critical along this path that all volunteers be enabled and encouraged, just like in our purpose statement, with our Agile for Volunteers approach, not favoring software initiatives. So I'm not saying that Agile for Volunteers is the essential component of this, but it is the entire notion of Agile for Volunteers has been conceived with this in mind. This is something we will need to test and iterate upon as we grow our whole team and our initiative agenda and Agile for Volunteers, of course, in general. We have a chicken and egg problem of sorts where having interesting initiatives to get some of that attention, again, that's capital A, the title of an episode, recent. That attention that helps move things along requires some people who are interested in advancing initiatives so that they are available to be encountered, to receive that attention, to draw more interest, and the circle continues. So someone has to work on a thing to have people say, oh, that looks interesting. How can I be involved or participate? To work on the next thing, which will hopefully be interesting and draw some attention so that more people might say, how can I be involved? And that looks interesting. This is where a startup mentality, a vision towards what may be found along the so-called long tail, and what may come next, in general, in some vague sense, are all essential and can be found in volunteers if we search with vigor for this precious and valuable resource. In other words, as I so often say, one of my favorite interview dreams in my job search history over the past few decades, I would much rather work on things I haven't done before than continue to work on things I have. That is a really hard sell, right? I don't want to pay you to work on things you don't know already. On the other hand, in a volunteer scheme, that's completely fine. If you are willing to pursue what you are interested in, it may be something you've never done before. That is the sort of thing that is a precious and valuable resource. Volunteer time, effort, and expertise are essentially gold if you can find them and put them to good use with other volunteers and grow a whole team. Whole team is an agile concept. Grow a whole team that can actually advance the cause, make an initiative into something tangible, something useful, something that other people can look in on and say, oh, hey, that made my community better, made me enjoy my day in some way. It helped fix a problem. It helped make something better. And that is a great reason to be a civic volunteer and to work on such things. And of course, collaborate with other people of that ilk, of that mindset, whether they're working on the same initiatives as you or whether you collaborate in some other ways. And that is the take home for what Agile for Volunteers is about. And it is hopefully one of the tools in our toolbox that will enable us to get things done. And of course, this is to be continued as an audio episode segment, another part to this story sometime in the future. And in real life, where all of this is always a work in progress and will hopefully always be up for continuous improvement. We'll see. It remains to be seen. So on that note, I'll bring this episode to an end. I'm seeing about 40 minutes. We'll truncate some silence. It'll probably be around 35 and then get back to work. Got to get some things done. Thank you for listening as always. Don't forget to check out our homepage at some point in the very near term. We'll see about this reorganization of some of our online resources and where you would find some things. And of course, if anything we're working on looks interesting, or if our methodology looks interesting, or most other things that we have in mind may seem to be interesting, by all means, jump in on an office hours session calendar on our homepage, and we'll see what happens. We'll go from there. Thanks. Take care. Until next week.